My parents added me to their mortgage and expected me to sacrifice everything. I found out I was tied to a mortgage I never agreed to when I tried to buy my first house. At the time, I was 29. I had spent years saving for a down payment. I worked overtime whenever I could. I skipped vacations. I drove the same beat-up car long after my friends upgraded. Buying a home felt like the finish line. Then the loan officer called me. At first, she sounded confused. She asked why I hadn't mentioned the existing mortgage. I thought she had the wrong file. I told her I had never owned a house. There was a long silence. Then she gave me an address. My parents' address. I laughed. I actually laughed because I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. The loan officer didn't laugh. She explained that according to the records, my name was attached to a mortgage that had been active for almost 6 years. My stomach dropped. I asked her to repeat everything. She did, and somehow it sounded even worse the second time. The mortgage balance was still substantial. The payment history wasn't perfect, and because my name was attached to it, lenders considered it my debt too. I left work early that day. I drove straight to my parents' house. The entire drive, I kept telling myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe someone stole my identity. Maybe there was a clerical error. Maybe the lender mixed up names. Anything made more sense than what I was starting to suspect. My mom answered the door. The second she saw my face, she looked nervous. That scared me more than anything. I asked if Dad was home. She said yes. I walked inside without another word. My father was sitting at the kitchen table. I put the paperwork in front of him. Neither of them looked surprised, not even a little. That was the moment I knew. They already knew exactly what I was talking about. I asked a simple question. Why is my name on your mortgage? My parents exchanged a glance. Then my father sighed. Not guilty, annoyed, like I had interrupted his day. He told me to sit down. I stayed standing. Then he started explaining. 6 years earlier, they had refinanced their house. Apparently, their credit wasn't strong enough. The lender suggested adding another borrower, someone younger, someone with good credit, someone who could help secure approval, me. I stared at him. I asked when I had agreed to that. My father said they handled the paperwork. That was his exact phrase. I asked how my signature ended up on legal documents. My mother immediately jumped in. She said it wasn't a big deal, that everyone benefited, that they never missed many payments, that the house would eventually be mine anyway. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They weren't denying it. They weren't apologizing. They were acting like I should be grateful. I demanded details. My father finally admitted he had signed some forms for me. He said parents did things like that all the time. I told him forging signatures was a crime. His expression hardened instantly. Then he accused me of being dramatic. That was the first time I realized they genuinely didn't think they had done anything wrong. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. That night I barely slept. I kept digging through records. The more I found, the worse it got. Not only was my name attached to the mortgage, I was listed as a co-borrower, not a guarantor, not an emergency contact, a borrower fully responsible. The next morning I ordered copies of everything, every document, every signature, every page. A week later they arrived. The signatures looked like mine at first glance. Then I noticed small details, the shape of certain letters, the way the capital M curved, the spacing. Someone had practiced a lot. I already knew who, but seeing it made me sick. I hired an attorney. He reviewed everything. After an hour, he leaned back in his chair and asked a question I wasn't expecting. Are you prepared for what happens if you pursue this? I asked what he meant. He said proving fraud could expose my parents to serious legal consequences, possibly criminal ones. I didn't answer right away. Despite everything, they were still my parents. The people who raised me, the people I spent holidays with, the people I called every week. The idea of reporting them felt impossible. My attorney nodded, like he had expected that reaction. Then he told me something else. The mortgage was becoming delinquent. I froze. Apparently several recent payments had been late. A foreclosure risk was beginning to form. That changed everything, because suddenly this wasn't about the past. It was about my future. I called my parents again. This conversation went differently. I asked whether they were behind on payments. My father immediately got defensive. He asked who had been talking to me. I repeated the question. Finally, he admitted they were struggling. Property taxes had increased. Medical bills had piled up. Credit cards were maxed out. Money was tight. I asked why they never told me. His answer still makes my blood boil because they expected me to help eventually, not ask. Help, like it was already decided. A few days later, they invited me over. They said they wanted to discuss solutions. I foolishly thought we might finally have an honest conversation. Instead, they presented a plan. Their plan. They wanted me to move into their house, take over the mortgage payments, pay the overdue balance, cover property taxes, and eventually refinance everything solely under my name. I sat there stunned. Then my mother said something I'll never forget. You don't really need your own house. I remember those exact words because they changed something inside me. Every sacrifice I made, every year I spent saving, every goal I delayed, none of it mattered to them. In their minds, my life existed to support theirs. When I refused, they acted shocked. My father accused me of abandoning family. My mother cried. They kept saying everything they had done for me growing up, as if raising your child created a lifetime debt. I left again. This time I didn't come back. For nearly 2 months we barely spoke. During that period I kept working with my attorney. We explored options. The biggest problem was that I wanted out without destroying everyone involved. That became harder with every new discovery, because more secrets kept appearing. One afternoon my attorney called. His voice sounded unusually serious. He asked if I knew about a home equity line of credit. I didn't. Apparently my parents had opened one against the house years earlier. The balance was substantial, and my name was connected to that too. I felt physically ill. The debt was significantly larger than I expected. Suddenly I understood why they were panicking. This wasn't a rough patch. They were drowning. I confronted them again. This time they couldn't hide it. The truth finally started coming out. For years they had been borrowing against the house, covering debts with more debt, making minimum payments, hoping things would improve. They never did. The house had become their lifeline, and my name had become their safety net. Then came the real turning point. My younger cousin called me. She had heard rumors about family drama. We started talking. Halfway through the conversation, she mentioned something strange. Years earlier, she remembered hearing my father bragging at a family barbecue. He said he had found a way to make sure the house stayed in the family no matter what. At the time, nobody understood what he meant. Now I did. This hadn't been a desperate last-minute decision. It had been planned. They intentionally tied me to the property without consent, without discussion, without warning. The realization hit harder than the fraud itself, because it meant they had never viewed me as an equal participant. I was an asset, a backup plan, a financial tool, a signature they could use. That hurt more than any debt. Eventually, my parents requested one final meeting. I agreed. We met at a restaurant, neutral territory. My mother cried almost immediately. My father looked exhausted. For a moment, I felt guilty. Then he started talking, and the guilt vanished. He said the house would be lost if I pursued legal action. He said family would never forgive me. He said everyone would blame me, not them, me. I listened quietly. Then I asked one question. What would have happened if I bought a house without finding this? Neither answered. I asked again, still silence, because we all knew. Eventually payments would fail, foreclosure would happen, my credit would be destroyed. My future would collapse alongside theirs, and they had never warned me, not once. The conversation ended there. A few weeks later, I made my decision. I formally disputed the fraudulent documents. The process was ugly. Relationships shattered. Relatives took sides. Some called me selfish. Others called me heartless. Very few knew the full story. Most only heard my parents' version. The son who wanted to throw his parents out of their home. That narrative spread fast. Truth rarely travels as quickly. Months passed. Investigations happened. Records were reviewed. Experts examined signatures. Eventually, the findings supported exactly what I had been saying. The signatures weren't mine. The documents were fraudulent. The mortgage situation began unraveling. My name was removed from liabilities connected to the fraud. The relief was enormous. For the first time in nearly a year, I could breathe. But the story didn't end there. A few months later, the house was sold, not foreclosed, sold. That surprised me. Apparently, once the reality became unavoidable, my parents finally accepted they couldn't maintain it. They downsized dramatically, moved into a small apartment. For a while, we had no contact. Then one evening, my aunt called. She told me something I hadn't known. After the sale, my father had privately admitted to several relatives that he never expected me to fight back. He genuinely believed I would sacrifice everything. My savings, my future house, my credit, all of it, because family was supposed to come first. When I heard that, everything clicked into place. The years of manipulation, the entitlement, the pressure, the guilt, none of it was accidental. They had built their entire plan around one assumption, that I would always put myself last. It's been 3 years now. I eventually bought my own house, the one I originally wanted. I should feel happy every time I unlock the front door. Most days I do. But sometimes I still think about that mortgage, not because of the money, because of what it revealed. People always imagine betrayal coming from strangers, identity thieves, scammers, criminals. You don't expect it from the people who taught you how to ride a bike, the people who packed your school lunches, the people who told you they loved you. We speak occasionally now, mostly holidays, mostly short conversations, careful conversations. The trust never came back. I don't think it ever will. And there's one detail that still keeps me awake sometimes. During the investigation, an old email surfaced. It had been sent years before I discovered any of this. My father wrote it to a financial advisor. In the email, he described me as the backup plan. Not his son, not family, not someone whose future mattered. The backup plan, 2 words. That's all it took to reframe every event that came before, every promise, every excuse, every emotional appeal. They weren't asking for help when everything fell apart. They had already decided years earlier who would pay the price when it did. They just never expected me to find out before it was too late.